Welcome back to our channel, everyone. This is Jeff, and following up on our short about a week ago, we decided to do a video for Haven, the free city. It's another city set, much like Thieves World that we did a week or two ago. And this one is designed or was published by Gamelords Limited. It's a classic kind of city. Oh, by the way, I did pick up a couple of extra items for this one back in the day, and this one dates back to 1983. So these were actually two separate items that were published later by Gamelord to fill out the free city of Haven, and also the Lair of the Freebooters is just an adventure that's set in the same universe, the same world as Haven. So like all cities, this one basically is a result of, how do I put this, the city of the Invincible, City-State of the Invincible Overlord, which was published by Judges Guild several years prior to this. And basically they kind of set the standard for cities, and actually Thieves World kind of followed that standard to a certain extent too, though of course it was based on fictional books, an anthology of authors talking about different kinds of events in a single city. This one is just a classic cityscape type adventure set, and what we have here is Welcome to Haven thing with some information on different areas and buildings in the city that apply to certain areas, like dining spots of renown, restaurants, and so on and so forth. And this folds out into a poster map of the city. Excuse me while I gently do this. It's a fairly old set. Acquired this one back in 1983 or 4. Anyway, so this is the layout of the city, and it doesn't go into a tremendous amount of detail, but these numbers basically represent the various things that were listed on the side there. And then they'll go into individual borough maps later on that'll break out each little section of the city in great detail. All right, so we'll talk about that. Here's the way they did this one was they broke it up into specific, each little booklet is a specific borough of the city. But they begin with Haven, the free city, and basically they talk about just an overview of the city, kind of gives you a feel for where it is in the world, gives you some background history, and so on and so forth. This is a highly detailed, actually, cityscape, along the same general ideas, City-State of the World Emperor, City-State of the Invincible Overlord, like I said, both by Judges Guild and done earlier. But, in fact, honestly, speaking from my own personal style of GMing, this one's actually too detailed. I'm much more likely to get bogged down in the detail than I am to keep the adventure flowing. But different strokes for different folks, and this may actually appeal to people that are more interested in detail, have more attention to detail on those things. Anyway, it kind of talks about different features of the city, the bridges, the city guard, transportation, and it explains how to use the city books within the box set. They have various lists of everything from types of things that you can buy, the quality of the goods, price ranges, and sign descriptions for descriptions for the various businesses. So when you refer to these tables, if the sign will be an A, B, C, D, E, or F, and A is very dishonest, F painfully honest, and it will give you a cash box location and so on and so forth. So you get some idea. And then there's the breakout at the back of the different types of boroughs that are going to be listed in individual maps. And they'll list what volumes these are going to be in. So it gives you some feel for what the city actually looked like. The very first one we have is the borough of the Labyrinth, and this is a very slim item here. There's very little information in here, and the reason is, of course, because they were going to publish this as a separate book, and did. And this one's just as complete as the actual free city itself. It's got all the same kinds of information, again, borough maps and so on and forth, but it also includes the individual maps for each section of the city that they're reporting on here. So it gives you some idea of what the plan was for this set. Next, we go to the Borough of the Heights. It lists personalities, locations. They're all going to be pretty much similar, so we'll just go through this one in a little more detail, and then the others will just list off what kinds of boroughs there are. So it's got a list of major families and talks about characters, and again, because it's not specifically designed for any particular role-playing system, what they've done is they've just given you a verbal description so that you can assign statistics accordingly for your particular role-playing game that you're using to play this. And then we have a group picture here of all the various characters from the various families. So you get some idea what they look like. And there's pages and pages of these descriptions for each family. And again, you can think of these families as factions. That's a fairly common term in usage nowadays. Back then it wasn't so much used that way, but the families basically are factions within the borough, and they are the kinds of people that you're going to have to deal with if you want to deal with higher level politics and those kind of things. Then it talks about the shops, taverns, and residences, and again, it'll give you an owner, it'll give you the description of the exterior and interior, it'll give you anything that's interesting in the area, and a list of occupants. Again, no statistics provided really. Basically, they just provide information that you can use, descriptive information that you can use to assign statistics. Excuse me. Then they get into individual facilities in the borough. So, for example, the area, dining spot of renown, and then Othmar the astrologer, readings from the stars, you know, those kind of things. They'll talk about the business and who's in there and all that. They'll go through, those are major businesses, ones that the players are most likely to spend some time at, and then they talk about all these other different businesses that they may need to visit for specific needs, like Mas Turker, the weaponeer, who does swords and bows. And then there's a blacksmith who does saddles and harnesses and so on and so forth. So again, tremendous amounts of detail for this specific borough. And then they have some scenario suggestions and plot outlines that you can use to set a particular adventure within this borough, within the city. Again, a tremendous amount of detail here available for you as a game master. Again, if you're the kind of guy that has, or gal that has the memory to keep all these factions and individuals floating around in your head, that's fantastic. For me, it's actually kind of overwhelming. So I'd have to be very careful about picking and choosing what individuals and what adventures and what buildings that I wanted to use. I suppose over time I'd become familiar enough with it that I would be able to overcome that, but next is the Borough of the Commons. Again, a very thin one because they were going to do a book on the Commons, but again, it gives us some list of the area. Borough of the North Corridor, same thing, same layout as the others. The Trade Island, and again, remember that map. The Trade Island was that long island in the middle of the river. And they'll again have illustrations of typical scenes at the locations, and sometimes they'll have group illustrations of the key players. The Borough of the South Corridor, the Borough of the Outlands, and then they have, excuse me, random encounters and NPC descriptions. Now, you remember in Thieves World, I love the way that the random encounters were laid out there. It was very easy and intuitive to use as a game master. This is actually the same kind of idea here, but this particular chart is crammed with detail, and it's much more reminiscent of the classic Judges Guild type product, where they used to publish these charts that look like spreadsheets used for financial planning or something. And it made it very hard for you to find specific things. The Thieves Guild layout was much better and much easier to read than this is. And this is one of those charts where you need to have a ruler or a straight edge so that you can make sure you're lined up with everything. But what it does is it lists different kinds of encounters and then gives you the percentage odds on a 100-sided die in each particular borough of the city, so that you can figure out whether or not that's likely to occur with your characters. You'll see South Corridor has a possibility of everything happening, and the rest do not really have that. Next, we come to the borough maps, and again, the main booklet showed you how those maps were going to be laid out. Let me go back to that one really quickly, and it shows you where the borough maps are, and then this is the individual borough map. So 1A is actually over here, just on the edge of the city. So that's the city wall, and there's the various streets, and then there's listed buildings here, you know, so that you have some idea of what's in those locations. And when you flip it over, you'll find a listing for each one of those buildings, so that you see what it is. And it should be mentioned in the appropriate section, at least briefly, of the main book for that borough. These maps in this particular case are designed to be cut apart so that you can arrange them so 1A and 1B are actually top to bottom, you know. And that way you can kind of get a feel for how the city looks compared to that. So again, you'll see here 1A and 1B. And they're all pretty much like that. So moving over here, next we come to Borough Map 4. You can see, again, the same kind of layout. You'll note that there are some stairs going up in this street, which is not uncommon in certain parts of Europe. So again, it's a nice little feature here. And map number 4 is actually located right next to 1A over here. And then each borough has its own little map, and sometimes they're to be designed to be cut apart. Bridges, the citadel, so on and so forth. All of these could be laid out on a large table, and I do mean large, like a ping pong table, so that you could actually have a very up close and detailed view of the city. And this chart, of course, shows you exactly how to lay out the different maps and where you can find them, which volumes. So when we come to Haven, volume 3, here, these maps, included in here, which I showed you briefly before, show like map 6, and we're looking at the back of map 5 there. So map 5 and 6 are located here and here, and they marry up with 1B. So again, there's a fairly complete set of maps for this entire thing here. The different, it actually looks like this particular volume is really both volumes 2 and 3 of the city. So for example, the map we're looking at right now is map 22, and if we look, we see 22 is where? Oh no, I'm sorry, it's 22 is right there. And again, here's the trade island with a couple of bridges going to it and a series of bridges across the river here. All of these can play important parts in whatever adventure you're trying to organize for the game. Again, speaking of complex charts, here's character descriptions, and this time they actually provided strengths and so on and so forth. Not exactly D&D. They've got some extra characteristics in here, magic resistance and so on and so forth. And they've got, they do provide the information you would need, like Hacko and damage and so on, and armor class, so that you could play D&D with this. But you can use these, for example, let's take a look at it in terms of the fantasy trip, for example. This first individual up here, Old Olaf, would have a strength of 8. He would have a IQ of 14. You know, he's got a lot of experience. And his dexterity, which they call reflexes, would be 14. So this guy's actually a pretty tough guy by fantasy trip standards. And you may want to adjust that if you're playing fantasy trip, but that gives you a feel for how you can use the different statistics to work different characters for different games. And that's pretty much that for this. The Lair of the Freebooters was a swashbuckling adventure in a notorious pirate town, and in the intro it tells you where they describe this map, that this entire event, this campaign, mini-campaign, takes place about 3,000 miles away from the free city of Haven. So obviously they're expanding the world quite a bit. And here's a picture of Brown's Island, which features heavily in the scenario. And if we go in here, they pretty much run it the same way they do everything else, which is they start out with historical background and introduction, talk about some of the locations and processes that you can go through, for example, hiring and so on and so getting hired. They explain how the ship's statistics work and how they can be affected by various events in the game, and then they give you a listing of the Corsair captains. Again, this time they provide statistics for their particular system here, which is designed more to be used, torn apart basically, and used for other systems, though you could play their game too. And they list all that. Then they go into specific localities and the kinds of adventures that can be there, and you'll see maps, and again, much like the free city of Haven, except much smaller, of course. And they'll list the town of Charlotte's Hole, all the different individuals that can play there, that, you know, the NPCs. And they have a discussion of the different businesses and individuals and so on and so forth. So again, pretty much everything that you would expect, again, in a adventure kind of campaign. Remember, this was the 1980s. And because of that, the text is dense. We didn't have much in the way of computers to work with back in those days, and the upshot is that everything was done pretty much by analog, so they crammed a lot of detail and a lot of charts into these things. And the upshot is that, again, you have to be prepared to deal with that, or perhaps to enter it into a computer for a few months before you play. But it does get you there. And then they have the adventures and encounters that you can have around the various parts of the thing. They've got a few handouts, which was a thing that was just beginning to take off in the role-playing game genre back in the early 80s, early to mid-80s. Actually, the leading event on that was the original Call of Cthulhu went big into player handouts, and everybody started realizing, oh, that's a really good idea. So they started creating handouts for this kind of thing. Keep in mind, Call of Cthulhu was originally published in 1981, and these came out in 1983. So, though actually, I think I lied to you. I think I said that I got this in 82 or 83. I actually got it in 84 because this was republished in 84 when they sold out the original version, and they upgraded the art and those kinds of things. Anyway, that's Free City of Haven, the Lair of the Freebooters, and basically it's a classic box city set from the days of yore, and it's actually pretty fascinating to take a look at this. I haven't had this thing open in years, and it's just fascinating to look at this and see how they did it. And like I said, it's pretty dense detail-wise, but if you're planning on using the Free City of Haven as a base for your game, then that detail is going to come in really handy for you, especially if you plan to do most of the adventures within the city. If it's just a home base, way more there than you need. But all in all, it was an excellent city set. It was well designed, it was well presented for the time, and it's just really a fantastic job that they did on it. I'll show you the back of the box so that you can see a little bit of the description there, if you need to pause the screen or whatever to read it, but it does go into detail, and there's a lot of information in this thing. So again, if you liked or enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Thanks a lot.